For Shantek CYInterview covering Las Vegas and the world today, we welcome Chief Operating Officer and Co-CEO of the restaurant chain, The Great Greek, Della. Penna. Thank you for joining us on CYInterview today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Also joining us today is CYInterview sponsor Rob Gill's Chief of Staff at Epic Financial Strategies LLC, Ms. Alexa Criollo. Alexa, thank you so much for joining us again on CYInterview.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
You're welcome. So Nick, can you begin by telling us about your story of more than 35 years in the hospitality industry here in Las Vegas and beyond, and then the story of how you got there with the Great Greek and have expanded this great operation?
Sure, I'd love to. So, the restaurant business has been in the family for generations. My grandfather and my father, they were in business together. They ran lounges and restaurants back in Massachusetts, where I was born. I moved to Texas after high school and went to college and wanted to take over Wall Street, and that failed miserably. And my dad taught me how to bartend as I got out of high school. So he said it was a skill you can fall back on. You just never know. So as luck would have it, I bartended my way through college. And like I said, I got out and, New York City, chased me away back to Houston. And that's when I got back into the hospitality business. And I was in Houston for about 7 years, primarily more in the bar and nightclub industry. And then I left there after 7 years, went to Washington, D.C. to open a restaurant with my parents right down in downtown D.C. And that's when I came to Vegas. After 1 year, I decided Vegas was where I wanted to be. And so I got to Vegas in 96 and started working in the casinos. I was the beverage manager at Caesar's Palace. And, then I wanted to get out of the beverage world. I mean, it was a great job. I loved Caesar's, but I needed more food. So that's when I started moving around the city a little bit, as Vegas has so many opportunities. And I was there in that, in the mid to late 90s when it was just exploding and just opportunity after opportunity. So I bounced around a little bit, and I went to Bally's, now the Horseshoe, of course. And then I opened Aladdin, now Planet Hollywood. And then I started, getting into the executive side of things. So I was a vice president of food and beverage for the Marnell family out in Laughlin. They had the two properties in Laughlin. So that's when I really got to the executive level of food and beverage and just expanding, my role. Then I went to Excalibur. I was the vice president of food and beverage at Excalibur, and I had made it. I'm on the Strip, right? I'm 50 years old. I'm vice president on the Strip, and I've kind of achieved it. And it was at my 50th birthday party that my next door neighbor asked me, "Hey, do you want to get into business together? I know you're in the restaurant space. I'm in the real estate business. Do you want to get a restaurant?" And I'm like, well, it's the night before I started my job at the Excalibur. And I was like, no, I'm starting my last job. This is it for me, But then after about 6-8 months, it just wasn't a cultural fit, and it just wasn't for me. And I knocked on his door and said, "Are you still interested in that restaurant thing? Because I think I'm ready to go out on my own finally," So he was. So we started looking, and we found a restaurant that was for sale called the Great Greek Mediterranean Grill down in Henderson. Small little store doing a nice little business for itself. I was a little apprehensive, to be quite honest. I had never done Greek Mediterranean. In all the 40 years of being in this industry, I had never done Greek Mediterranean. So I wasn't sure if I could add value. I knew the hospitality business. I know guest service. I know that. But do I know Greek? And once we ate there, again, the original owners were amazing culinarians, put together a great menu. So that gave me a little, took some weight off my shoulders. Like, I don't have to add value in the kitchen. Let me clean up the front side. Let me add processes and systems and things that I've learned in the 20 years in the casino business, and let me get that, let me add my value there. So that's where it all started. And that's how we took over 8.5 years ago. And that's kind of where the Great Greek all began.
So let me just ask you, Nick, just to break it down for us. How many locations do you guys own, and then how many franchises are there across the world?
Yeah, so we own 7 of them here in Clark County, in Las Vegas and Henderson and North Las Vegas. We're opening another one in about 4 to 6 weeks in the southwest part of town. So that'll be 8 in Las Vegas. We do have another one under development, under contract as well, that won't open up till maybe Q1 of next year. We own and operate one down in West Palm Beach, Florida. So actively we have 8 locations, soon to be 10. And on the franchise side of things, we started franchising 6.5 years ago. We opened our 51st franchise location in Ladera Ranch, California on Monday. That makes 51. We've sold territory in Egypt. We'll be opening up one in Egypt probably this year. And we'll be opening up one in Toronto. Probably in the next, 4 to 6 weeks. So, outside of being in, I think we're in 19 states right now. At the end of the year, we should be in about 27 states. We'll open another 15 to 18 this year. It's this one little, 1,400 square foot store in Henderson has turned into, soon to be, 100 plus franchise location at the end of next year with an international footprint in Egypt and Canada, and more international deals are very close to closing. So it's been remarkable growth in 8.5 short years.
Alexa, questions for Nick. I mean, amazing stories. Obviously, you work in the business world at Epic Financial Strategies LLC and get to see success and team building. But just talk, and we always like to talk about the growth of people. Questions for Nick. And by the way, they have locations in New Jersey.
Yes.
That was my first question.
We do.
First of all, Nick, thank you for sharing. That's incredible. I mean, for me, I love to hear the story of how you got to this point, because as Rob says, success is 10 years, overnight success is 10 years in the making, right? You don't see the behind the scenes, and all that experience that you were acquiring throughout your life is really what got you to this point. My question is, when did it shift for you from you went from an employee, executive, and then business owner, right? So how was that transition for you, and what were like key things that maybe you learned or had to learn to step into that new role?
Yeah, it was scary. I'm 50 years old. I've got, at the time I had, I think, a 6 and a 3-year-old at home, maybe a 5 and a 2-year-old. So had a wife who had an amazing job. So that was some level of security, right? But to go out on my own, I mean, even at 50 with the 20 years in the casino and the training, you said it great, Alexa. I wouldn't have been ready for this opportunity earlier. I mean, I would hope that it wouldn't have taken 20 years, but the fact that it did, I felt so prepared for it. I was a little scared, but I knew the business, right? So I knew how to operate businesses. So I was willing to put in the work. So although it was scary, it wasn't hard. Once I took it over, just the instincts took over, right? Now I'm working for myself. I felt like I was a very good steward of the businesses that I worked for. I took a lot of pride in my successes and just in delivering for the companies that I worked for. Now I'm just delivering for my family, which made it obviously much more personal. And it just made it gave me just that drive to be even better. But it really, it was nerve-wracking before I got there. And then once we took over, I was just operating. And then it just became my operations, right? I was always active. I was always an operator. I love being in the business, a hands-on kind of thing. I was never one of those ones just behind the desk looking at P&Ls. I mean, that was part of the job, but that wasn't the fun part of the job. I love being out there with the people and with the employees. So I think just all that training just took over when we took over the restaurant, and I just started operating and grew the business from there.
That's incredible. So you were ready. It kind of just kicked in. That's amazing.
For sure. But again, all those, when you're sitting in some of those training classes, with MGM or at Aladdin or wherever I was, it was like, what is this benefiting? And, you fast forward a few years, it was like, I would have never been able to do this without all that foundational work that I did on myself, that I had, and the mentors that I had throughout my years. I mean, and there's some people, maybe there's some people that weren't a mentor, but you picked a couple things out of that person. I've had so many leaders and so many people that I reported to that are presidents and general managers that, you pick up all those little pieces for, and you form who you are. And it's like, if and when I have the opportunity to do this on my own, I'm going to pick this part of him, this part of her, this part of him, and put together who I want to be as that top person. And, it really, again, without that foundation, there's no chance we'd have 8, soon to be 10 restaurants, 50 plus in Egypt, all that. Never would have been.
I love that. And Chris, you're right. This is a great business conversation because, I think nowadays there's a big uptick in people wanting to be entrepreneurs, right? And wanting to work for themselves. But I do agree with you that in order to be ready for that, you have to learn to be a follower first in order to be a great leader on some level, right? Mentorship is so important. So I think it's amazing that you're proof of that. Your story is proof that that's how it is.
Yeah, I mean, and again, there's some people who have great mentors who don't find success. There's some people who, have the mentors. It's all, but to prepare yourself for that success, to have those people in my life that pushed me, that taught me, that developed me, like I said, there is no chance I'd be here without them.
Love that.
No denying that. So let me ask you, Nick, quick question for you. There are so many, let's just speak about the restaurants you own in Las Vegas. There are so many restaurants in Las Vegas. I think this is becoming the food capital of America, much like already the entertainment capital of the world and becoming the sports capital of the world. I don't think anyone can deny that. How have you stood out? How did you expand it?
So when, like I said, when we bought the restaurant, it had been open for 4.5 years and they were passionate about the food. So I wanted to obviously, being in the fast casual space, I don't care what sort of a box you build, we're proud of our service. We're proud of our decor. We're proud of everything. The food is the star of the show, right? You can be transactional in service. You can have okay decor. The music can be a little off, but if the food's the star of the show, that always has to be the case. I think we wrap it all together, right? We take pride in our service. We take pride in the ambiance, in the decor. The music's got to be right. The smell's got to be right. Everything's got to be firing. All your senses got to be firing. So, but we stayed true to the food, right? Everyone told me once you start growing, you'll see you're going to have to change. You're going to have to start packaging your product and selling it, and find a co-packer to make your tzatziki and in some big plant and ship it around the country. And I said, I don't think so. And someone's going to have to prove me that that's the case. So, we haven't done that. I said, if I can do it with 1, and then I did it with 2 and 3, and now I'm doing it with 7, why can't we do it with a few hundred around the country, right? Get the responsible, franchisees that bought into the system and say, you want to be like everybody else and buy our hummus and buy our baklava and do all that, or do you want to make it and be different? And that's what separates us. We had to stay true to the food. We had to stay true to who we are at our core. And we are a scratch kitchen. We're cooked to order. And that's who it is. That's why I think that we have lifelong customers that just keep coming back again and again. And we can't deviate from that, And, we're at 50 stores now, or 60 with our stores almost. And people are telling me, you got to start looking at that. I'm like, I'm going to push back as long as I can push back. And, with our franchise organization, all the food decisions come through Vegas. We have to do this. I have a partner in West Palm Beach who helps us grow with the franchise, but, all the food decisions come through Vegas and nothing's changing. We're not going to start, have a co-packer and make our tzatziki and ship it around the country. We're going to stay true to who we are. And if we did it with 1 and we're doing it with 60, we can do it with 160 or 260.
I hear you, Nick. So Alexa works with the great Rob Gill, who is a CYInterview sponsor here, Nick, and he just put out a book called Surviving Success. Alexa, can you tell Nick a little bit about Surviving Success?
Yes, and I would love to, and it goes hand in hand kind of with the conversation, but I always bring a copy. Surviving Success, it is really it's a story that talks about Rob Gill, his life, his personal story. He's sober 27 years since 1996, didn't come from money, but was able to overcome a lot of obstacles and, now owner of multiple 7-figure businesses, 1 8-figure business. And although that's alone very inspiring and incredible, but he talks about all the things he did wrong, right? And like mentors teach us what not to do as well as what to do. And I think he really ties in not just creative financial strategies, but how he's implemented that in his own personal story, right? And the idea of surviving success is how do you readjust your own standard internally to accept and receive the new blessings that you're stepping into. Because once he started making, he went from making 12,000 to 100 to 300,000 to $1 million, you're a different person in every single one of those stages. So if you don't change, right, and you stay the $100,000 earner at $1 million, you'll go back there. Just because mindset is everything. So I think it is such a beautiful story, but very educational, that talks about that. And obviously entrepreneurs, business owners can benefit from not just the strategies, but the mindset part of it, right? If you want to go from 60 locations to, 260, you're going to be a different Nick at 260 than you are now, right? And that's just the truth. So,
Lexa, with your permission, we'll get him over the copy of the ebook, of course, as always.
yes, yeah.
We'll copy him on an email after this is over and we get this out. Nick, let me just ask you thoughts on what Alexa said.
Yeah, no, I see myself changing almost year to year, and you never stop evolving, right? You never stop learning. I learn how to lead every day, right? I learn how to be that different version of me every day. And it, there's more responsibility, the more stores we open. Now we employ almost 200 people. And now a lot of my day now is focused on how can I better those people's lives, right? I have the ability now to improve those people's lives. When I was a VP, in the casinos, or a director or a manager, I could do my best to treat them well, but now I'm making all the decisions, and now we can afford to do the insurance the way we want to do insurance. We're looking at more insurance. We've gone to 4-day work weeks for our managers. Just something that in the food industry, who works 4 days? It's usually 6. We went back a day. We didn't add a day. So we're just trying to continue to evolve and innovate and be able to affect people's lives. Work-life balance was huge for me. And when I was, before I got married, before I had a family, my work was my social life, and I chose that, right? I felt like I chose that, and I would work the 60, 70-hour work weeks and not complain. I'm trying to, figure this town out and figure it out. But I understood once I got married and once I had kids, that work-life balance was so important. So we're backing it up. We're doing 4-day work week for our managers, and we're providing so much more, our bonus program. So we're evolving so much, to your point, and it's being a better version of me and a different version of me, and just the responsibilities. It's not pressure. It's just responsibilities, and it's a gift. It's not a burden. It's like I have the ability now to affect these people, to move these people up, to advance their careers, to make them more money, to get them a different position. So I absolutely agree that you're evolving. Maybe it's not on a daily or weekly or monthly, but every year I feel myself evolving, and it's like, wow. When I look at the mindset and I look at just some of the tangible things from 8 years ago, it was like, I've come such a long way. This growth, this 8-year growth in my life from 50 to 58, 59 has been the biggest growth I've had throughout my entire career.
That's amazing.
You've been talking about it. Go ahead, yes.
I love it. That's amazing. And funny enough, I used to work in the catering space at some point, right? I was a bartender at one point, and staffing agency. Like, I tried to do that at a point in my life. But what I noticed is a lot of bartenders, a lot of people in that industry, they get caught up in that as a social life, and they don't get out of that cycle. As far as they work so much, they're getting out at 2 a.m. and they're like, let's just stay out till 4, right? So that it is so easy because everyone around you is doing those things, and you are who you surround yourself with. How did you step aside from that or surpass that, right? How did you overcome that?
Yeah, it was, it was later in life, not later in life, but, I was in my 30s or so, and I didn't get caught up in that stuff, right? Because, in college, I was never really in college. I bartended, right? And I bartended 5-6 nights a week. So I was always hosting the party. I was never at the party. So when I wasn't hosting the party, I didn't want to go to the party because I came from that the last 5 nights. So it never really involved me. It was like, I'm here hosting the whole thing, right? I'm a bartender, I'm a manager, whatever. on my one day off, I'm gonna chill out. I'm not gonna get back into it on the other side. So it never really swallowed me up. I mean, were there some late nights? Of course there were. But, and then as I got to Vegas, now it was like, okay, I've got to prove myself all over again, right? When I left Houston, I was the vice president of a nightclub company. And I went to be an assistant beverage manager at Caesar's Palace, making a quarter of what I made in Houston. So I had to prove myself all over again. These are people I didn't know. This was a different world, right? So I was pouring myself into the business, and it wasn't. It was to advance, right? It was I want an opportunity after opportunity, because here I am making a quarter of what I was making in Houston. I'm pouring myself into this thing. So it was purposeful, right? It was to advance. It was to get that opportunity and prove myself. And it wasn't just to go out and have another drink after work or be part of the party and the action. I was driven. It was for a purpose. So my 60, 70 hours was to get me where I am today. It wasn't to be a part of the party. It was to get me where I am today.
Love that. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. So, Nick, you've kind of spoken about it, but just to break it down, how would you define your business philosophy?
So, it's almost like the golden rule of life, right? Treat people the way you want to be treated. I think it's very, very similar to that. I mean, but it's just your customers and your employees, right? It's not necessarily just your friends and family. We got to take care of our customers, and we have to take care of our employees, right? And I know I've read book after book after book. Some say employees are more important. Some say customers are number one. And you can debate that back and forth. I'd say they're one A and one B, and I don't know which is A and which is B, right? They're both as important as the other. But that's the thing. I mean, you take care. I'm not so much, looking. I have a great business partner, Trent Jones, and he's the real estate guy, and he's looking for more locations. He's doing that kind of stuff. I'm looking how to better our people. I'm looking how can I advance their roles? How can I, the last director of operations we had was a food server of ours when we took over the first store. No education, just a passionate, knowledgeable, hard worker that advanced, was with us for 8+ years and advanced from a server to our director of operations. I think there's 3 people. We have 21, 22 managers within our company. 3 of them we hired from the outside. 18 of them we've moved up from the hourly ranks, whether they were a cook, a server, a prep cook, or whatever. We've advanced them up in their lives. So that's what I like to do. I like to advance people up. I like to take care of the folks, give them opportunities, maybe put them in a spot that they're not quite ready for, because like me, I wanted to prove myself that I was ready for that spot, if given that opportunity. So, so that's really the philosophy, is just treat your customers really well. Don't cheat them, stick to your core and who you are, and take care of your employees. I mean, that's what, like I say, I've advanced 18 people into leadership roles, and I'm looking to do more. Every time I ask my managers at the store, who's the next one? Who's the next one up? Because I would rather develop them from inside. They understand who we are. They're passionate about our food. They understand our culture. And, look, sometimes you have to go outside to fill a spot here or there. But when we have that, when we can develop from within, I think it's a massive win for everyone involved.
No denying that. Alexa, final questions?
Well, first I just want to say I think that's incredible that it seems like you really want to empower your people, right? Your employees, take good care of them, and obviously that you do that for your customers as well. Mm-hmm. And you kind of stole my question, Chris, because my question was going to be, what are your core values as a business, mm-hmm. right? Because it seems like no matter what, you go back to that, no matter how big that you get, and which is probably why you're so successful. But so my question would be, in the next 5-10 years, what would it look like if everything goes your way?
That's funny you say that, because my father, who lives in Las Vegas, he's 80, he's going to turn 83, 84 this year. He always says that he's saddened that he's not going to see the end. And I don't know what the end is. And I don't know that he's not going to see the end, because he's in great health, and I want him to see the end. But I don't know what the end is. I don't know if it's 400 stores, 30 countries around the world. I don't know. I don't know if it's, going to Wall Street and having a public company. I don't know what the end is. And that's the part that I think when my father says that he's saddened because he doesn't think he's going to see the end. And I don't know. I don't think there's an end. All right. I don't think there's an end. I think we just continue to grow this brand, around the country, around the world. And, I think we become the preeminent fast casual Greek Mediterranean brand around the country and around the world. You have your Chipotles, you have your Five Guys, you've got these leaders in that space, right? I think the Great Greek can be that Chipotle Five Guys of our space in the next 5-10 years. I can see, 400 or 500 stores in 30 countries. I really can. I don't know if there's an end. And if my father's going to listen to this, there's no end. I'm not going to see the end. It's going to keep going. There's no end to this story, I don't think.
I love
Well,
that.
the thing that you also got going for you, Nick, is that you're in a space, in a kind of restaurant with a kind of food where I can't even think of any competitors.
There's not that monster out there, right? We don't have to go out and try to slay, Five Guys or Chipotle. I know I keep referring to those brands, or, pick a sandwich brand, Capriati's, Firehouse, whoever it is, right? There's no monster. I think we're going to become the hunted soon. There's some regional ones out there. But again, to have that preeminent, fast casual Greek Mediterranean brand around the country, I think the Great Greek is going to be that brand in very short order. And again, I don't think there's an end to this story.
Nick, Della, Penna, Alexa Crioja, thank you both for being on CY Interview today.
Thanks
for having me.